Voici le script complet, mot pour mot, prêt à enregistrer. There is someone in your life, or someone who was in your life, and you have always felt that they were not showing you everything, not lying, exactly, not cruel, exactly, but holding something back, something real, something that lives just behind their eyes in the moments when they think you are not watching. Something that surfaces briefly in the way they say your name sometimes, or in the silences that fall between you at unexpected moments and last just a second too long. You have felt it, you cannot prove it, but something in you has always known it was there. Perhaps this person has been careful with you, measured, controlled, always slightly out of reach in a way you could never quite name. Perhaps they have been warm, and then suddenly distant, present, and then suddenly gone, and you have spent more time than you would like to admit trying to understand what was happening beneath the surface of what they were showing you. Perhaps you have even wondered whether you were imagining it, whether the thing you were sensing was real, or whether you were simply projecting onto someone what you needed them to be. You were not imagining it. What you were sensing was real. And tonight, I am going to show you exactly what it was. What has been living in this person beneath the surface for years, why it could not come out before, and why something has shifted. Something has changed. Something that has been contained for a very long time is finally, quietly, breaking through. Carl Jung, one of the greatest explorers of the human soul who ever lived, dedicated his life to a single territory that most people never dare to enter. The territory of what human beings hide, and why, and what happens when what is hidden can no longer stay hidden. The concept at the center of everything Jung discovered about this is the shadow. The shadow is every part of a person that they have learned over a lifetime is not acceptable, not safe to show, not welcome in the world, not permitted to exist in the light. It is not only the dark parts, it is the tender parts, the needing parts, the parts that love too much, that long too openly, that feel things with an intensity that the world has taught them to be ashamed of. The shadow is everything that had to go underground. And Jung observed something that every person who has ever waited for someone to open up needs to hear. What goes underground does not disappear. It waits, it gathers, and eventually it finds its way back to the surface. Not always in the way we expect, not always at the moment we choose, but always. The shadow always finds the light again. Jung observed that the pattern you are living right now, this experience of sensing something real and present in another person that they will not or cannot fully give you access to, is one of the most common and most psychologically significant experiences a human being can have. It is not a sign that something is wrong with the relationship. It is not a sign that you are imagining things. It is a sign that you are in proximity to someone whose inner life is larger than what they are currently able to show. This distinction is important. Some people are withholding because they are calculating, because they are protecting themselves at your expense, because the concealment is a power move. But that is not the kind of person this is about tonight. The person this is about tonight is someone different. Someone who has something real inside them, something genuine, something that actually concerns you, something that belongs to the space between you, and who has not yet found the conditions under which it is safe to let it emerge. And the question Jung would ask is not, why are they withholding? The question Jung would ask is, what had to happen in this person's life for them to learn that this particular thing was not safe to show? Because nothing goes into the shadow arbitrarily. Every buried feeling, every suppressed truth, everything a person cannot bring themselves to say, it went underground for a reason. Someone at some point taught this person that showing this particular thing was dangerous, that being this vulnerable, this open, this real, would cost them something they could not afford to lose. Maybe it was early. Maybe it happened in childhood, in the family they were born into, where a certain kind of emotional expression was met with silence or punishment or withdrawal of love. Maybe it happened in an earlier relationship, a trust extended and then broken so completely that the lesson the psyche drew from it was never trust this way again. Maybe it happened so long ago and so quietly that this person does not even have conscious access to when or how it happened. They only know, in some wordless way, that this particular part of themselves cannot be shown, that it costs too much, that the risk is too great. And so it went underground, and so it became shadow. But here is what you need to understand about the shadow, because this is the thing that changes everything. The shadow does not only contain what is painful, it contains what is most alive. It contains the feelings that are too large for ordinary life, the love that is too intense, the need that is too real, the longing that is too honest to survive in the world as this person has had to navigate it. The shadow holds all of this, and all of this, compressed and contained and unspoken, generates an enormous amount of psychic pressure. And you have felt that pressure. That is what you were sensing, that slightly too long silence. That specific look that came and went before they could stop it. That moment of warmth that broke through and then was immediately pulled back. That was not nothing. That was the shadow pressing against the wall that was built to contain it. That was everything they have not said, making itself felt in the only way it currently can. And somewhere in you, you already knew this. Not in words, not in a way you could have explained to anyone who asked. But something in you knew that what you were feeling from this person was not absence. It was pressure, the pressure of something real, trying to find its way out. Here is the central paradox of tonight, and it is the one that reframes everything. The more carefully someone has hidden something from you, the more certainly it means that thing is real. I know this seems to contradict what the world has taught you. The world has taught you that if someone does not show you something, it is because it does not exist. That absence of evidence is evidence of absence. That if they felt it, they would say it. That if it were real, it would be visible. But Jung would tell you that the world has this exactly backwards. The things that are most carefully guarded are the things that carry the most charge. The feelings that are most deeply suppressed are the feelings that are most alive. A person does not build elaborate psychological walls around something that does not matter to them. They build walls around what matters most, because what matters most is what they can least afford to lose, and showing it means risking it. Think about this for a moment. If this person felt nothing for you, truly nothing, no connection, no recognition, no feeling worth mentioning, what would they be protecting? Why would they need to hold anything back? Absence of feeling requires no management. It asks nothing of you. It does not create pressure. It does not surface in unguarded moments. It does not live in the silences. Only the presence of something real creates that need for containment. Only something alive exerts that kind of pressure. The walls this person has built are not evidence of nothing. They are evidence of something so significant that it required architecture. And according to Jung's framework, this is precisely the moment when the architecture begins to crack, that something important is about to change. Let us talk about what that actually looks like. The specific phases through which what has been held back begins to break through, and how to recognize them when they arrive. The first phase is what I would call the slip that could not be taken back. This is often the first visible sign that something is shifting. It is a moment, small, apparently accidental, in which something true escapes, a sentence that goes further than intended, a look that lingers too long before it is pulled back, a response that is more honest than the pattern that came before it, and that both of you notice, even if neither of you names it. This slip is not accidental in the deepest sense. The conscious mind may experience it as a mistake, something that was supposed to stay contained, something that got out before it could be stopped. But Jung would say the unconscious produced it deliberately. The unconscious has been looking for a crack, a moment of lowered defenses, a fraction of a second in which the wall is not fully maintained, and it used that moment to send something through. You may have experienced one of these moments with this person already. A text sent, and then immediately apologized for or walked back. A moment of eye contact that broke protocol. Something said in a low moment that was never directly acknowledged afterward, but that you both know was said. These slips are the shadow, beginning its return to the surface. They are the first sign that what has been held is becoming too large to hold. The second phase is what I would call the withdrawal that follows too quickly. This is the phase that often causes the most confusion and the most pain. Because just after the slip, just after the moment of unexpected openness, there is almost always a retreat, a sudden distance, a return to the careful, managed version of themselves that you are more familiar with. Sometimes the retreat is so swift and so complete that you are left wondering whether the slip even happened, whether you imagined the warmth, the honesty, the brief opening of something real. You did not imagine it. The withdrawal is actually confirmation. It is the shadow being pulled back below the surface by the same protective mechanisms that put it there in the first place. The moment of openness created anxiety, real psychological anxiety, the kind that comes from having shown something that the deep layers of the psyche have been trained to believe is dangerous. And so the automatic response activated. The walls went back up. But here is what this phase tells you. It tells you that what emerged was real enough to require that level of management. A feeling that did not exist would not need to be pulled back. Only something significant, something genuinely present, requires that kind of swift and anxious containment. The third phase is what I would call the changed quality of the silence. This is subtle, and you have to be paying close attention to notice it. But the silence between you, if there is silence, if there is distance, if there is a period of less contact, it begins to feel different. It begins to have a different texture. There is something in it that was not there before. A kind of heaviness, an awareness, a sense that something is sitting in the silence that neither of you is addressing, but that is present to both of you in a way that ordinary absence never is. Jung observed that significant unconscious material always generates what he called a field, a quality of atmosphere, of weight, of something hanging in the air that sensitized people can perceive even without being able to name its source. The changed quality of the silence is this field becoming perceptible. It is the unsaid thing making itself felt in the space between you, even when neither of you is filling that space with words. If you have noticed that the silences feel different lately, heavier, more charged, more full of something unnamed, that is not your anxiety projecting. That is the shadow of what this person is carrying, beginning to make itself known in the atmosphere between you. It is a sign that the pressure has increased to the point where the containment is no longer complete. The fourth phase is what I would call the indirect approach. This is the phase where something begins to move. Not directly, not yet, but circling. You may notice this person finding reasons to be in contact about things that are not the real thing. Reaching out with a question, a comment, a forwarded article. Anything that creates a point of connection without requiring them to name what is actually driving the impulse to connect. You may notice them bringing up the past in ways that seem casual, but are not quite casual. Mentioning a shared memory, referencing something from before, returning to territory that has emotional weight while maintaining the appearance of ordinary conversation. This circling is significant. It is the unconscious finding the safest available path toward what it needs to express. A person who has learned that direct expression is dangerous does not move directly toward what they want. They approach obliquely, testing the ground, feeling for safety, checking whether the conditions have changed enough to risk a more honest approach. The indirectness is not evasion, it is caution. It is the shadow choosing its moment. The fifth phase, and this is the one that everything has been building toward, is what I would call the breaking through. This phase looks different for different people, and it rarely looks the way you might imagine. It is not always a dramatic declaration. It is not always a confrontation or a confession. Sometimes it is very quiet. A conversation that goes somewhere neither of you planned. A moment of honesty that arrives without announcement and sits between you with unexpected weight. A simple sentence. Short, undefended, more real than anything that came before it. That changes the entire texture of what exists between you. Jung would say that the shadow, when it finally emerges, is almost always simpler than what was imagined while it was hidden. The elaborate architecture of containment creates the impression that what is inside must be equally elaborate, equally defended. But what comes out is usually just the truth. Usually just the feeling. Usually just the thing that was always there, finally finding a voice. And when it does, when this breaking through happens, the response it requires from you is not triumph. Not urgency, not the immediate rush to build something from what has finally been revealed. The response it requires is a quality of stillness, a willingness to receive what is offered without grasping at it, a patience that honors how much it cost this person to let it surface. But here is what Jung would add, and this is the part that most people skip, because it requires turning the mirror around in a direction that is uncomfortable. Everything I have described, the slip, the withdrawal, the changed silence, the indirect approach, the breaking through, you have been watching all of this, feeling all of this, sensing all of this from the outside. And there is something real and valid in your perception. You have not been wrong. You have not been imagining things. But Jung would pause here and ask you something different. He would look at you directly and ask, what have you been holding back? Because the shadow does not belong only to the person you have been watching. It belongs to you too. And while you have been carefully attending to what this other person could not show, what have you yourself been unable to say? What has been living in the silence on your side? Not just waiting for them to open first, but genuinely unexpressed because expressing it would mean risking something you are not yet sure you can afford to risk. The feelings you have for this person, the full weight of what you carry about this connection, this situation, this thing that has been living between you. Have you said all of it? Have you found the words? Have you found the moment? Or have you, too, been waiting for conditions that felt safe enough, for a sign that it would be received, for something that told you the cost would not be too high? This is not a judgment. It is an observation that Jung would make gently, but without evasion. We are drawn to people whose inner landscape mirrors something in our own. And if what you see in this person is someone who carries more than they can show, it may be worth sitting very quietly with the question of whether the same is true of you. The real work in this moment is not to manage the timing of the other person's breakthrough. The real work is to get honest about your own shadow, the feelings you have filed under too much, too soon, too vulnerable, too real. Because the moment you stop waiting for their walls to come down and start examining your own, something shifts. Not just in you, in the entire dynamic between you. This is what Jung always came back to. The transformation that matters is always interior first. Everything else follows from there. Tonight, you came here carrying the weight of what you have sensed in someone else. The feeling of something present and real and just beyond reach. That feeling is not nothing. It is not wishful thinking. It is not the projection of what you want onto a blank screen. What you have been sensing is real. The pressure you have felt, the charge in the silences, The weight of what has not been said, the brief moments where something true broke through and then was pulled back. All of that points to something genuine, something that has been living in this person that concerns you directly. And something about that is finally shifting. I cannot tell you when. I cannot tell you how. I cannot promise you what form it will take when it arrives. But I can tell you what Jung knew, and what every honest examination of the human psyche confirms. What is genuinely true about a person cannot stay hidden forever. The shadow always finds its way to the light. Not always on schedule. Not always in the way we imagined. But always. And until that moment arrives, the most powerful thing you can do is not to wait with your eyes fixed on them, but to turn some of that attention toward your own interior, toward your own unheld truths, toward your own unexpressed feelings, toward the version of yourself that you have not yet found a way to fully show. Because when two people finally become honest at the same time, when what has been held on both sides is finally allowed to surface, what emerges is not just relief. It is recognition. The deep, wordless recognition of two people finally seeing each other, perhaps for the very first time. That recognition is worth waiting for, and it is worth becoming ready for. You are not wrong about what you sensed. You never were. Tell me one thing in the comments. Have you ever felt that someone was holding something significant back from you, something real that concerned you directly? Just one word is enough. Yes. Or simply, still waiting. I read every single message. If this reached something in you tonight, share it with someone who is living inside this exact feeling right now. Someone who has been sensing something they cannot name, and someone they cannot stop thinking about. Subscribe for teachings that go this deep every week. You are not alone in this. What you feel is real, and the truth, in the end, always finds its way through.